Elite Marketing. She has presented nationwide on all aspects of social media and online marketing to worldwide brands, including Microsoft and Staples. Alicia was the keynote presenter at Franchise Source Brands International Annual Conference, is a constant contact certified authorized local expert speaker, and has been honored as an influential entrepreneur with the Worcester Business Journal's 40 Under 40 2012 award. With no further ado, can we have Alicia come up? She's going to be speaking to us about constant contact.
Okay, everyone hear me? Good? Okay. Hi, my name is Alicia Williams. Hold on, let me click. Talk faster than I click. Is that one? Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm based out of Northborough, Mass, so not very far away. And I own a company called Elite Marketing, and I partnered with Constant Contact several years ago, mainly because I use their products for my business growth and for my clients as well. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is experience that I have using it on myself and for clients, and hopefully shed some light on how you can use it for your needs, for your business needs. So I encourage you to connect with me online. You will receive all of these slides, so don't stress about writing down all the statistics that I'm going to share, but more just kind of the aha moments that you get. Do you want me to pose?
You're doing it already.
I feel like paparazzi. I'm going to stand over here because I can actually see. I'm sure you will. Okay. So how many of you, show of hands, have either used newsletters, offers, promotions, surveys in order to talk to your audience, communicate with them, or gather feedback? I know it's before lunch. It's like the worst time to speak when everyone's hungry. But I'm going to call on names to get everyone talking. So for the majority of us, we've either used newsletters, we've heard about promotions, we're talking with our customers, our clients, our prospects, our donors. So these tools, they are a part of marketing, and how we all pull them together is a marketing strategy. So what we're going to be talking about today is what are campaigns, specifically newsletters. What is an email marketing campaign, the difference between a professional provider and your Gmail or Outlook. Email and social, how are you connecting the social media pieces? And then where do you go from here besides the torrential downpours? So campaigns and newsletters. So if we think about marketing, I love to market. Does anybody wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to market today. I just can't wait to get up and market? Anyone? No? Okay. I had one hand, really? Really? Okay, I don't even do that. You wake up and you're like, I'm going to get 500 donations today. I'm going to make 30 sales calls today. I'm going to go to X networking events. I'm going to go to this conference today. So at its core, marketing is doing something in order to get a response. So if we're going to send out a newsletter, that's great. But if we don't get that response back, then we're just sending out a newsletter to send out a newsletter and tell everybody that we sent out a newsletter. If we get a response, then we're actually marketing with that newsletter. So a campaign is just that. We're going to push out content, and we're going to pull a response. So it could be click now. So I get way too click happy. It could be click now, read more, donate, register for the event. Those are all calls to action. Those are all responses that we need to get when we send out a newsletter. Because of course we want to give our information out and we want to educate our audience, but we need something back in order for our time to be warranted on email marketing. So what is a newsletter? Does anybody check their email? Anybody doing it right now? Fabulous. We had an email newsletter way back there. So email marketing, or just email in general, the majority of us utilize email to talk to our peers, to talk to our prospects, to talk to donors. We use email communications more times than the phone sometimes, right? Does anybody prefer? I see Brianna's head shaking. So email marketing, when we think about Gmail or Outlook, is much different than using a platform called Constant Contact or MailChimp or whichever provider you're using. It's more professional. With Gmail and Outlook, you can't measure that. You can't see what time somebody opened up that email, if they forwarded that email on, if they unsubscribed from your email. So in terms of measuring and marketing and tracking that, you can't do it. But with a professional platform, you can actually make it a marketing tool, because I can see what time you open up my email, what day, who you forwarded it on to, and what links you clicked. So in terms of marketing, it's a huge wealth of knowledge of what content your audience cares about. So different types of newsletters, and each business is completely different. Restaurants could hang out on a newsletter platform that looks like an invitation. Versus myself, I don't do event invites. I do more educational pieces, and I market out my blogs that I write. So there are different types of newsletters depending on what your goals are and what your objectives are. So they could be keeping your audience in the know, so just articles that you want to share. They could be registering for an event, a press release. So these are just different types of emails, and that content will help dictate what your template looks like. So email, what do you write about? Does anybody have writer's block? No one? Really? Then you're all hired if nobody has writer's block. Everyone comes across when they're ready to sit down and do their newsletter and they're thinking, I have no idea what to write about this month. I could write about the event I just went to, or I can write about the event that's coming up, or I can write about what I saw at the grocery store that made me mad that day. We all have struggles when we're writing content about what's going to get clicked on and what's going to get read. So a good idea is write about something that you know that your audience doesn't know. Would you all consider yourself fairly educated or experts in your industry? Yes? Okay. I'd say so. So when I came to this, I was talking with Brianna, and I said, okay, so tell me who's in the room today? What is the businesses that are here? What are the target audiences that you're all trying to reach? And Brianna, without hesitation, answered all of it. I'm sorry I'm calling you out, because I know your name. You shouldn't introduce yourself. So Brianna knew without hesitation who's in the room today and what your target audience is. So she's more educated on her field than I am. So she writes an email and she could tell me about that, and I'm the recipient. I'm going to find it extremely interesting because I don't have access to that information. I don't live and breathe the industry that you have in front of you right now. Just like marketing for me, I could talk about marketing all day, but you may not find it very interesting. So it's my job to make my industry interesting for you, to click read more, to forward it to your friends, to engage in the conversation. So start with writing about content that you know and your audience doesn't know. What you have access to that they don't. If there's an upcoming job fair that you are either a part of or you know of, sharing that information is valuable to your audience because they may not have seen the job fair. They may not have access to where they could register for it. Original isn't required, just be interesting. Does anybody read great articles online? Or not online, just in print? Okay, let me start with an easier question. Does anybody read? Okay. A little bit? Okay. One hand. All right. So if we read, then we'll find out that there are many different articles that are extremely interesting and they pertain to our industry. If they're online, it's even better because then we can share that content on our social media pages, on our email marketing campaigns. A good tip is if you go to LinkedIn, and I know they were talking about LinkedIn earlier, so sorry if I repeat it, but if you go to LinkedIn and you subscribe to different blog articles that relate to your industry, you can actually get an email digest of all of the amazing pieces of content that relate to your industry. So you really don't even need to spend any time looking for the articles, they'll come directly to you. And then you could take those articles and share them in your newsletter so that your audience is gaining access to content that you have that they don't. Sound kind of easy, right? It's coming right to your inbox. And you all admitted that you read your email. So how much is enough? Less is more, so focus. How many of you have a smartphone? Tablet? Desktop? Laptop? Computer? Okay. So the majority of us are looking at our emails or the websites through a small little screen on your mobile device or on a tablet. So if we have a giant newsletter that's really, really long and has a ton of information, and we're expecting our audience to read it on a mobile device, will they? I don't know. I can only scroll so many times down the phone before I get tired and bored and just uninterested in it. So think about where your audience is looking at your content and focus less on having every single call to action possible in the newsletter and having maybe one or two calls to action that you know your audience will actually click and read because you're only asking for that certain call to action. I met with a woman earlier last week, and she sent me her email so I could look at it and kind of give my suggestions. I counted 50 calls to action in one newsletter. It was a million different links: read here, click here, register, donate, download, buy now. And I said, what do you really want them to do? Because I am very confused. Do you want me to click on this link to read more, or do you want me to purchase your CD? Because I'm not going to do both. I only have 24 hours in a day. I'm going to read your email. That takes maybe an hour to do after 50 calls to action. Give me one thing that you really want me to do. And when you start thinking about that, it becomes a marketing piece. Well, I'm going to send out this email because I want them to register for this job fair. That's the only call to action I want them to do. If you start narrowing down your calls to action, I guarantee you're going to get more responses because you're asking for less, which you're going to get more back from that. So 51% of us are checking our email on our mobile device. A picture is worth 1,000 words, we like to say. Does anybody use Pinterest? Or take pictures? Or look at pictures? Okay. We are a very visually driven society. My husband says I pin myself to sleep on Pinterest because I'm constantly looking at images and putting them in my scrapbooks on Pinterest. For men that love Pinterest, there's actually, side note, Gentle Mint is a Pinterest for men, so it has really cool beer stuff on there too. Okay, that's a whole side note. So pictures say 1,000 words, and we're driven by images. If there's a shiny billboard, it makes us hungry, right? I see the pizza shop, they have a newsletter, and they send me their brick oven pizza pictures, and instantly I want pizza for dinner. So when we have an event, instead of just saying invited now, when we share pictures, people are more drawn to that. So I encourage you to utilize your pictures and put that throughout your newsletter, but also making sure that in case their images don't load, because some of us on our email have disabled images, that those images have text under it that explain what it is. So if you have a flyer for your event, you're not going to make the whole email that one flyer image. You're going to have text about the event in case that image never loads. They're still able to gather the information. So this is using images really carefully. How on a mobile device it changes so often. So the first one was the image never loaded. So if they didn't have text under that image, they would have no idea what that email is about. The second one is a mobile-friendly template, which makes the image formatted correctly for the responsive screen size between a tablet or a mobile device. And the third one is not a mobile-friendly template, so the image just didn't load correctly on. So whatever newsletter you're creating, I strongly encourage you to test it on yourself. Send it to yourself via email, look at it on your phone, and see how the template is responding. So some channels thrive on visuals. Facebook, Google+, Pinterest, Instagram. So when we look at a photo album on Facebook or on Pinterest, we many times spend more time looking at the images than we do reading people's posts because we can relate to whoever's posting it. So that's another great way. If you have an event just like this today, take a picture and share this on your newsletter. Share this on your social media pages. Let people know that you're here learning how to offer more for your audience, and you're getting better at marketing for that audience. It allows that barrier to be broken so that your audience can kind of see, who are you? What are you doing every day when you go to work? Does anyone like to recycle? Okay, I got some hands, some heads. Okay, good. I love to recycle, especially when it saves me time. So repurpose your content, because who sees it on your newsletter doesn't necessarily see it on your Facebook page, your LinkedIn page, your Twitter page. I'm going through all the social media pages. So repurpose that content. If you write a press release, okay, so we have one press release, how can we leverage that one article so that we can market to all of our pages? So one of our clients, we sent out the press release, and then we put that press release on the website blog, because once it's on the blog, we want to drive traffic to the website. We then took that same blog article, we put it in their newsletter with them to click a link to read more to drive them back to the website. And then we posted on their social media pages, driving them back to the website. So we used that one press release, and we got content for all of the social media pages and the newsletter. So I'm going to kind of paint you a picture, too. Anyone fly? I'm not sure about now if anyone wants to fly, but think about your website as Logan Airport, okay? So Logan is the hub of everything. Your website is the hub of everything. Newsletters offer virtually no search engine optimization value. So they are not really getting you any benefit. You're just kind of sending it out. That's why we need that response back. So you have your newsletter plane, your Facebook plane, your Twitter plane. You have all these social media planes flying around. And they don't actually do your business justice, and they don't make you money unless the planes are docking at Logan, picking up passengers, and bringing them to other locations, right? So if we're only sending out a newsletter with a full article, we're not getting any value from that. So our goal is to drive whoever's visiting our social media pages, whoever's visiting our newsletter, we need to drive them back to our website. The more traffic and visitors and clicks we have going to our website, the search engines say, this is really good content. These people know what they're talking about because visitors keep going there. They're hanging out on this website, so we're going to help improve its rankings. So it's really important that we're not selling the store, giving away everything in our newsletters or everything on our social media pages, but rather we're giving them short teasers that drive them to the website for the full article. How is that pictured? Is anyone still up in the sky flying around with my image? Okay. So now, later, or never. There are three little words that kind of rule our world, right? We either do something now, we save it for later, or we never do it. So how do we get our emails open? Once we figure out what the platform is, what the template's going to look like, what the content's going to be, how do we actually get somebody to open up that email? Well, it starts with who is it from. If I constantly send out my emails from my alicia@alicemarketing.com, and then I randomly say, you know what, I feel different today. I'm going to send it out from alicia@hotmail.com. The majority of you would never open up that email because we're so afraid of being spammed and getting a virus, and you don't recognize that email address. So I encourage you to start with the from line. Whatever you always send out your emails, that is the email address that you want to continue sending out your newsletters with, because people will open something that they recognize who it's from. What's the subject? The subject is really important. You can have a lot of fun with headlines. I'm going to come up on that slide too. And when do you actually send out your communication? So I'm going to give you some tips on how you can test out the perfect day and time to send out your email. So who's it from? How are you most recognized on social pages? And it'll help reduce your spam. My mother-in-law, which whole other story of why I didn't open up the email, but she sent me an email that did not come from her name. And so I deleted it because I had no idea who it was. Lo and behold, a few weeks later, she asked, why didn't Alicia open up my email? I had all these images for her. Well, it was the simple fact that I didn't recognize the email. I told her I had a virus, but it was really because I didn't recognize the email address it was coming from. Subject line. So in 2 seconds, in as little as 2 words, we need to get our audience to open up that email today. So if we look at magazines, sorry, I want to make sure I click enough. We look at magazines, the majority of us read a newspaper or buy a magazine based on the front cover and the headlines. And then when we actually read the articles, the headlines are way better than the articles ever were. I realized this after I purchased a whole year's worth of a magazine, and every single article was the exact same every month, but the headline was different. But it got me to buy it because the headline was so intriguing. So if we take that same concept and we apply it to our newsletters and say, okay, March newsletter, that sounds really boring. And I think the word newsletter scares people. I think of a church bulletin when I hear newsletter. But a newsletter really could be a paragraph. It could be just click here, register here. It doesn't have to be this lengthy 5-page thing, but the majority of us think of that when we hear March newsletter or quarterly report. So have fun with your headlines. Tomorrow, need 3 hammers. Joe's Pet Store, alert, help your dog beat the heat. Children's classes, still time openings available for children's classes. I love to have fun and take a little bit more of a risk with your subject line. Numbers and lists do extremely well. If I say April newsletter, you're like, I don't really have time to read what happened in April. But if I say 3 mistakes you're already making in your website, the majority of you are going to say like, I have 3 quick minutes. I'd love to see what mistakes I'm already making. And then instantly you open up the email. So think about subject lines. What would get you to open up that email? If you don't want to read your own email, I guarantee your audience does not want to read that email either. So when to send, this is A/B testing. Monthly is most common. I like to say whatever you can consistently do. If you leave here today and you're like, we are going to do a weekly newsletter, that sounds great for us. But then life kicks in, and that week happens to be every other week, and then once a month you send out a newsletter, and then every other month, and then once a quarter, and then maybe once a year, and then you just stop. Consistency is so important when you're marketing, especially online. So you want to make sure if you leave here today and you're like, a monthly newsletter is perfect for us, we can consistently do it, then stick to that. If you can do every other month, or you say once a quarter is fine, then that's perfect for you. Whatever you can consistently do, I applaud you for. So monthly is most common. Ask yourself, when are your readers most likely to read the email? So finding your best day. We did this with two clients. We did one with a real estate agent, and the other was a restaurant. So we took 3 groups of people from their list, and we selected 3 different days. We did Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we sent out the newsletter to those 3 different groups on those 3 different days. And then we looked at the responses to see what day received the most open rates. And for the real estate agent, Wednesdays seemed to be the higher hit, and the restaurant was Fridays. Well, that makes a lot of sense, because on Monday, we're kind of annoyed that we're back at work. On Wednesday, we're just trying to get through the last 2 days. And on Friday, we're thinking, yes, it's the weekend. What should we do? So those days actually made much sense for the restaurant. So now we found the best days, so Wednesday and Friday. We took those same 3 groups of lists, and we selected 3 different times of the day on that best day. So we did the morning, afternoon, and the evening. And looking at the reports, we found that the real estate agent around lunchtime received the most opens, and for the restaurant at 4 o'clock on Friday was the biggest hit. And you're thinking, okay, 3:30, they're getting ready to go, they're powering down their machine, and bing, that email pops in with dollar drafts, and they're opening that email. I'm opening that email. So think about the best day and the best time and test it out, because your audience could be early morning commuters reading their email on the train at 5 o'clock in the morning. They could be reading the email at 11 o'clock when the kids finally go to sleep. And the only way for you to know that is by looking at the reports, seeing what day and what time the majority of your audience opened up that email. Don't be romanced by high open rates. I did a presentation at the Small Business Expo in Boston, and this woman came up to me. She's like, I really don't need your help. I have a 30% open rate. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Did anybody actually call you or click on your email or hire you? She goes, no, but I have a 30% open rate. Okay then, let me see how that pays your bills. So don't be romanced by how much percent. It's great if you're above average and people are actually opening up your emails. That's half the battle. But we need to get a response back. So are they calling you? Are they showing up to your events? Are they going to the job fairs? Are they calling you, donating? Are they taking the action that you wanted them to do? So email and social. Social media influences our decisions. We rely on social networks in order to make a decision to purchase. Anyone purchase off of Amazon? Living Social? Any of those? So if you notice, the next time you purchase something, a pop-up will come up and say, do you want to share this on your social pages? Well, it's brilliant, because chances are your connections like the same things you do. So if I just purchased a Living Social deal and I shared it on my Facebook page, the majority of my friends are going to say, I want a piece of that, and they're going to join. So a lot of our decisions are based on what people are saying, our friends, our network are saying online and on social. 68% of us learn about what a charity is doing about donations online. Anyone do the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge? Some? Okay. So that went viral on social media. So you have to use both. You can't just have an email marketing campaign. And you can't just have a Facebook and a Twitter and a LinkedIn page. You really need to utilize both in order for them to become marketing tools and strategies. So amplify your email by posting that, hey, we just released this great newsletter on the top ways to get a job, and you post it on your Facebook page. So anyone that you're connected with on social that's not a part of your email campaign can now get access to it and sign up. Likewise, on your social pages, you could drive them to your newsletter, and on your newsletter, you can have links for your social media pages to drive them to your social pages. So remember that, Logan, we need to drive them to all the pages so that they can connect with us in as many places as possible. I'm talking fast because I'm watching the clock. So, it's daunting. Okay, so if we look at this example, Beloco did an email campaign, and they posted it on their Facebook page, telling people that they just released a new coupon through their email marketing campaign, and that they can sign up if they're not already on their newsletter. They also posted it on their Twitter page. They pinned it on their Pinterest page. So they took that one article that they had, and they really strung out every single page so that they can make the most mileage out of it. So the next steps, where do you go from here? Simple share. So when you create your email, in the from line, so you type in your from line, you type in your subject line, it's going to have a pop-up, at least on Constant Contact, that says, do you want to add a share bar? And the share bar allows somebody to receive that email, and if they love the content so much, they can click on any of those social media icons, and it will actually share it on their pages. So what does that mean for you? If you have 10 people on your newsletter, okay, and I'm one of those 10 people, and I have 1,000 friends on Facebook, and I love your email so much, all I have to do is press Facebook, share it on my Facebook page, and without you asking me, I just gave you access to 1,000 new contacts that now just saw your email. So that effortless motion of just saying, yes, I want the share bar on my newsletter, made you have access to a broader reach. The only time you don't want to put that on there is if you just want it to be private. So if I'm sending an email about how a client's website did, I don't necessarily want them to share that on their pages, so I wouldn't have the share bar on there. The other is having your social media icons everywhere. It is very difficult to find a company on social media. Sometimes you have to get the spelling exactly right. So our goal is to make it effortless for our audience to connect with us. Have your icons on your business cards, your invoices, your website, your email marketing. Literally everywhere your logo is, your icon should be. Start building your list. On Facebook, on LinkedIn, and we're always worried about how many likes and fans we have. If those sites disappear tomorrow, you don't own those contacts. They will disappear forever. Your email list, though, you own it. So spend the time, build your contact list, because if social media, and I don't foresee this ever happening if it disappears, but you own that contact list. So you can decide that I want to email today, and I don't want to pay extra to have it sent to that email. I just want to contact my database. So spend the time thinking about events like this, building your contact list, job events. You can even have them text to join, scan to join, good old paper and pencil to join. If you have a website, you can put a website sign-up form on your website that allows them to enter in their email, and it will automatically go into the database for Constant Contact. You could do the same thing for Facebook. So I actually will create 2 different lists. I'll create a website list and a Facebook list. So if somebody joins through Facebook, they go to that Facebook list, and it helps me track how many people I'm capturing off of each platform. The scan to join and the text to join. I have actually on my business cards, it's text, Alicia at 2228. And when you text that keyword, it's a little vain having my name, but if you text that keyword, it'll enter you into my email contact list, and I could track that. So I can see at the Small Business Expo, I received 50 new emails because they each texted that keyword that related to that event into my email database. So it's a really great way to track where your emails are coming from. Wise Stamp, I love using them for your email signatures. Anybody have email signatures? Email signatures are free, and they're prime real estate. So go onto Wise Stamp, create your email signature. Even if you don't go onto them, you can create it just in your mail preferences. But make sure you have your email, your phone number, your website, and of course your social media icons, so that if they see your name and they want to connect with you, it's right there in the email. They can instantly click the button, and it brings them right to your pages. And that's me. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to kind of answer. I know that was a ton of info, but I promise you, when you start thinking about what's that call to action, what is that one goal that you really want your audience to take, It will help craft what template design you want for your newsletter. If it's to register for an event, if it's to read a blog article, it kind of will help dictate the layout of your email. And then from there, you can share it across your pages.
Alicia, I have a quick question
Sure.
about the website sign-up tool.
Sure.
So you would have that, how would that work? You would have the website sign-up tool on an article that you've written that someone has shared, and then they sign up that way?
Okay, so kind of two ways. So your website sign-up form is you can actually, when you log into Constant Contact, it'll have sign-up tools, and it'll say, I want a form on my website, and it'll give you a code. So you're going to take that code, whether you know how to do it or you bring on your website developer, and you say, I want this, the form, the website sign-up form on my website. They just need that code in order to enter it in. And then once that's on the website, when somebody enters in their email, it actually brings them to Constant Contact, that you can ask them a whole hootload of questions that you're going to use for your own purposes, but at least they can sign up that way. When you're talking about when you send out a newsletter, how do you get them to join on? So when you figure out the newsletter and you hit schedule, it's going to say, do you want to share it on your social media pages? So when it shares it on your pages, it's going to have the title of your newsletter and the link of your newsletter, and saying if you're not going to receive this or you're not on our list, make sure you sign up now, and it'll have the link. Yeah. So it's just a button that you click for that. Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is, a lot of the work we do is really, people can say on social media, I'm out of work, they don't want people to know about that.
Mhm.
How do you have these people on your social media or to send them information without really, these stigma thing coming up? It's like, is there a way you can do that, so that people can receive newsletters, can receive information from us without really saying, okay, you are getting stuff when I'm running?
Did everyone hear the question with that? Yes? Okay. So you can do it in a way where you can always create a private group on social media, so it can kind of be like a support group with job seekers. With the email, you don't have to say, sign up for this email newsletter to find out jobs. You can position it in a way that whether they're a job seeker or their potential employer, that they want to join on to this newsletter, because you're giving content that's helping both of those channels. So I think it's more of how you kind of word the newsletter that makes that stigma go away. Does that, I'm not sure if that answers, okay.
Man on the move.
I can figure out. My question is about legality as far as participating in a newsletter. Do you have to have someone who has an option to unsubscribe, and do you have to have their permission to put them in that distribution list? Do you have to have that beforehand before you can blast people? Because I thought there might be some legal issues surrounding that.
Yes, absolutely. I am strongly against purchasing a list and blasting out an email, mainly because you'll get a ton of unsubscribers, a ton of spammers, because they did not want to receive your email in the first place. So it is very important to spend the time building your list with people who gave you permission and actually care about your email, because when you get reported as spam multiple times, it makes your email more susceptible to being blacklisted, and once it's blacklisted on search engines, it's very difficult to get off of the blacklist. So I encourage you to do it that way. When you create your emails, all of Constant Contact emails have a safe unsubscribe button at the bottom that allows your audience to unsubscribe at any time. When they do that, you can leverage that piece, because you can ask them, why are you leaving? And if everybody's leaving because your content is irrelevant or it's too long, then you know it's something you're doing, and you can adjust it to make sure that that content represents more what they're looking for. So I would definitely have, that's at the bottom of all the emails. And then you can also allow permission reminders at the top of an email, and you can vote to have this on it or off of your email. And it basically just reminds people that you signed up for this email list because you wanted to be a part of it, but at any moment, if you want to unsubscribe, you can click unsubscribe right now. So it just reminds people, because we sign up for emails all the time, and half the time we forget what we even signed up for. So it's just a way to remind them that they actually wanted to receive this.
When you said that we could share a lot of the things that are coming through to us, and if I was going to share something on Facebook, all right, does the original sender get to join that Facebook with the 1,000 people that I already have?
No, because if you send out, so I sent you my newsletter, and you just shared it on your social pages, I can see through the Constant Contact reports that you forwarded and you shared my newsletter on your pages, but I can't get access to your network because I'm not friends with them. So it's still yours, but my hope is that your audience that sees the content will then click on to my website or click on to join my newsletter list on their own. If I see that you are the one that's constantly sharing my content and forwarding it, I'm going to reach out to you and say, I can't see your name tag, it's way too far away. So what's your name? Bob? I was actually going to say Bob, which is weird, but I'd say, Bob, thank you so much for constantly sending out and forwarding my email. I would love to know who you're receiving it or who you're forwarding it to so I can add them to my list and they can receive it directly. So that would be kind of how I would handle it, but I can't see your friends unless I'm friends with you. Okay?
We want to thank Alicia for coming out today.
Thank you.
I believe they should have a mug for you in the back. There's plenty of those as a champion for Mass Biz Works, as one of our marketing pieces. So next up we have Kevin Lynn, and Alicia's right, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So Kevin did a presentation about 3 years ago that we'll never forget, because the first picture, if you were there, you know what it is. All right, here you go, Kevin.
Oh, now I remember. I didn't remember. Yeah, wow. All right, so I want to give you some ideas of how this works at Career Center level. So I just going to give you some examples of, if I can find the clicker, of sort of what we do at Future Works. Key point: you're buying a car. You walk onto a car lot, and the sales guy says you can have this car over here for $20,000, or you can have this car over here for free. What is the sales guy telling you? He's telling you there's no value in the car for free. And that's the same deal with any product out there. And the bottom line is Constant Contact's going to cost you money. All right, I know just sends a chill up all your spines, but it's going to cost you money. But you get what you pay for, and that's a fact of life. This, by far, is the most effective thing I have ever purchased in my 14 years working at the Career Center. Bar none. This conference is built on Constant Contact. The name badges you're wearing were created by Constant Contact. It's a very powerful tool. It's an email. You can link things through it. You can link it to social media. I'll show you some things later, but I link certain things. My newsletter goes to my Twitter account, which is also linked to our Facebook account. One thing, blast it out. This first is business events. This is the, I know you can't really see it in the back, but this is to give you an idea. This was what you filled out. You already saw it. Filled out to come here today. So it's great for business events. What are some of the things that you can do with it? Other things, job expos. We use this to register for our job expos. Used to be that we would send out an old-fashioned email, and I would blast out faxes, and we would have forms come back to us on paper, and we would have to have a spreadsheet and enter who paid and who didn't pay and where they are, and there was just this constant rigmarole of keeping track of data. I love data. I hate tracking it. I like it to happen automatically. I'm very lazy. This is a great data management tool. Makes your life so much easier when you can just do one thing and have everything sort of, the dominoes sort of fall after each other. So we have companies register for a job expo. We just did one October 6th. I send out an email to our business list. Blast that baby out. And it says, putting America back to work job expo, the area's premier recruiting event, and then they have options. And I'll get to the options in a second. They basically tell me their company name, their address, their zip code, their phone, who the contact is. Then we have, we partner with a local radio station, WMAS radio. Because we have our job fairs in the Hall of Fame, Basketball Hall of Fame, and they allow us to get in there, the most expensive piece of real estate you can get into in Springfield. So we have 3 levels of packages, one of which, the most expensive, which is $785, goes right through the radio station. So we have 2 packages that we're responsible for now, one for $425 and one for $185. Our customers can choose to pay by check, or my favorite, pay by credit card. Why? We get the money up front. You're not running around doing collections. Your finance people will love you. There's a number of outstanding, we still have them, don't get me wrong, but a number of outstanding back payments are a lot less. How do we do this? You link a credit card payment system through Constant Contact. There's a cost, 3-point-something% of whatever the dollar amount the credit card companies get. Well worth it. Why? I can see instantly when they register whether they have paid. And I don't know about you, but I've noticed a big trend around HR folks is no one has a checkbook anymore. No one wants to write a check. Everyone's getting credit cards. It makes the registration system much easier, faster, and you get the money. E-newsletters. This is our weekly e-newsletter called In Touch. Interestingly enough, this is something that I began as strictly a job seeker tool. I get a lot of feedback from HR folks who get it. And basically the reason is they're job seekers too. So I started promoting to employers in here, just strictly, the only thing I ever promote on this to employers is our job expo to employers, to companies. Why? Because it also tells our job seekers there's a job expo coming up. And people do click on this, and people have registered through this. As a matter of fact, we did some specialized job expo workshops that we zipped out. You have an archive set up that you can put. It's on our website, main page. I keep the 5 most recent newsletters in our archive for people to come see. And also to the archive, you can also sign up too. And you can join the mailing list. One of the big things that we're trying to do is trying to streamline the job fair, the workshop registration for job seekers. So we have begun the process, and we started with our no-cost workshops. Why have them call? Why have them, go to the front desk? Just do it online. So I want to go to the new personal branding and networking workshop. I click on the link. Oops. Did I die? Wow. You can tell it has a new battery. I seem extra loud. Any questions about that? Using Constant Contact. Yep. Chris?
Is on all right?
Yep.
So first I want to get on the under 40 list. Sounds good. Sounds like I'm not there anymore. My staff know I like to make fun of myself.
Look, I'm shooting for 50 over 50, but hey.
We won't go there. 2 questions. How much is as a director or cheapskate or whatever, how much does the constant contact cost you? And number 1. And then number two, nothing is robotic, we think everything's automatic, but there has to be somebody, I know you're streamlining it, you have a good sales presentation, but there's gotta be someone who manages it, puts the stuff in, looks for the data, reads the data. So who does that in the staff? Who does it? Do more than one person do it? Because it'll be a work item for someone that I'll have to delegate.
Well, the cost is, first of all, the most basic form is it's dependent upon your list, your email list size. There are nonprofit rates as well that you can explore. So it depends upon your list size. And then there's other features, like there's the events. For instance, this was produced through the events area. And then it's also the cost of if you decide to use a credit card payment system, there's that 3-point-something% that you're going to get kind of whacked for everyone that goes that. The honest answer? I don't. I just get it. This thing has wormed itself into our infrastructure that it's so critical now. It's like, I can't remember. I want to say off the top of my head about $2,000, $1,500, $2,000.
It's about $2,000.
Yeah, it's about in that range. I can't remember. I'm at a point where I can't envision living without it. Second question is, for instance, the workshops. My front desk staff has access. We also didn't put it in here, but we also do job postings through Constant Contact. So my BSRs are accessing Constant Contact to take the job postings. So they can click through our website. We take the job postings right there online. In terms of the newsletters, I do that. The job fairs, kind of depends upon the job fair. I've been doing mostly, but I've been trying to get the BSRs to do those kind of exclusively too. But you only have so many. You can only have so many passwords out there, so you've got to be kind of judicious on how many you can assign. You're welcome.
I'm just wondering whether it makes sense for Mass Municipal or DCS to get one constant contact that we can all share and use.
Yeah, you'd have to talk to them and see what they.
If there's multiple ones, you may want to talk to Constant Contact about being a partner, so that you have the partner account, and then all of these accounts are under the partner account, and then you can actually get kind of a kickback.
Oh, nice.
That may work, or if you want to keep them separate, I know it starts at $20 a month to answer his question on contacts, so kind of different options.
Yeah, it's nice because you can divide up the list, business lists, job seeker lists, or event lists.
Chris, I don't know if you can hear me. I handle Chris or Lowell for the most part for social media and the Constant Contact.
I have a wire, so.
And honestly, there's so many ways and tools out there like Hootsuite and stuff that if you were to designate someone that is savvy with social media, that you can really get into it. To be very honest, I do Hootsuite probably every month, every 2 weeks or so, go in there, schedule things out that are on my workshops we're doing or anything else I want to post on, and then I pop in 5-10 minutes a day just to check in, make sure. I am savvy, that's my background, so I understand social media. I have it on my phone if something were to come up to answer a customer's question. It doesn't take that long. Constant Contact is very user-friendly, so again, if you have somebody in your office that is user-friendly, as a staff, and I can promise you it really doesn't take too much of your time once you get it implemented. That's the
So
key.
how many hours a month do you spend on
Maybe 4 or 5.
Alright,
Like,
thank
really? It depends on how much activity and Constant Contact, but really it's not that much
Thank you.
overall.
So if you have any questions, feel free to email me, kaylin@getajob.cc. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. So things have, in the past 24 hours have changed a lot. Not a lot for me, but the title's a little different now. I think my boss is having a good time and trying to make it as long as possible. So I'm still doing training, but they have me running corporate marketing too, which is actually a good segue into the idea of the sales piece. Thank you very much. Want to clarify a couple things. First, Conservation Services Group. Who are we? What do we do? When you talk about energy efficiency implementers, there's utilities out there, and there's utilities across the country. And a lot of times there's regulations that say they have to be more energy efficient, or they have to use less energy. And the question becomes, why would a utility want to use less energy, right? Because that's the product that they sell. The reason why is because utilities have to spend a lot of money, not only to build a new power plant, but a lot of money just to get that on the table, right? To get the folks to agree to it in terms of where it goes and the cost and so on. So back in the mid-'80s, the founders of our company worked with Massachusetts legislature to say, you know, there's a better way to do this. Instead of keep building power plants, that's not sustainable. Let's try to get people to be more efficient. So what we do as a program implementer is that these utilities will have these energy efficiency programs, and we help them run those programs. What does that look like? We might come to somebody's home. We do an assessment on their home. Maybe the home needs more insulation or needs a thing called air sealing because it's drafty. These are things that make you use more energy, right? And when you resolve these things, it's a win-win, right? It's a win for the utility because they're following the regulations that the state is setting for them. It's a win for the customer because they're using less energy, their utility bill goes down. And it's a win for local business because local contractors, we refer to them sometimes as trade allies, they don't work for us, but they'll work through our program. And we give them the leads for business saying this person is looking for this service. We make sure that that person that is conducting that service, conducting that business is on the up and up and everything's great. And that leads me into why I'm talking to you today. Because these contractors that work with us have to sell. And when it comes to sales, it doesn't matter really what you do. Because even though you may not be selling, the communication part of it applies regardless. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. We developed this class, Proactive Transactions, for those contractors. And what we found is that we now give it to our employees as well. So the same reason why I'm speaking to you today is these are skills that you'll be able to apply on the job, and they're going to help you. So I want to start kind of set the table with, I feel like, is it Bob Barker? Remember Bob Barker and The Price is Right? He'd have the mic. It was always like long and skinny. You guys with me on that? Yes. You didn't think you'd get a Bob Barker reference, but you did. It's pretty good. But come on, you guys know that. So here's the deal. Question for you. Have you ever had a situation where you have two meetings over the course of a day? I don't care what the meeting's about. It could be project related, right? Could be sales related. Could be a negotiation. I don't care what the subject matter is. But you're looking to accomplish something in that meeting. And you have two separate meetings with two different individuals. But the scenario is the same. The topic is the same. The subject matter is the same. The goal for the meeting in your mind is the same. And something happens. One goes wonderful. The other one goes awful. Absolutely awful. Show of hands if that's ever happened to you. All right, a lot of honest people in the room. I like it. I've done this sometimes and nobody raised their hand. They're like, I'm perfect. So, never happened, but it's okay. What do you say when you leave that meeting that doesn't go well? Who do you blame it on? Them, right? What do you say? You walk out of there and you say, oh, he was an idiot, right? She was annoying. They just don't get it. Because that other meeting was awesome. And what happens is we blame it on the other person, like it's their fault. But there's really more to it. Anybody ever hear of Myers-Briggs before? Okay, so you've heard of Myers-Briggs. Anybody tell me what Myers-Briggs is? Personality type assessment, right, kind of tells you who you are. And if you're familiar with it, you know that usually you're defined as an acronym, right? So for example, if somebody's an ENFP, each letter means something. So in that example, ENFP, E means extrovert. Now you might be an INFP, and I means introvert, and all the letters mean something. And it's important to understand that because an extrovert is somebody who enjoys working with other people. They get their energy in a group activity. An introvert is opposite. An introvert gets their energy working alone. They're more effective that way. And when they're in a group setting, their energy gets drained. They're not as effective. Now, if you work with somebody who's an introvert, this might be the kind of person who will seek out individual tasks. They want to be part of the team. They get it. But they know in their mind, psychologically, they're more effective. They gravitate towards something where, I'll take it and run with it. I'll get back to you. And personality type has a lot to do with that. Now, Myers-Briggs has 16 different personality types. And when we were putting this class together, feedback we got from people in our industry, outside of our industry, people that work in an office setting, people that work in the trades, they all said the same thing. They said, I go to some of these sales classes and I get this Myers-Briggs thing and it's wonderful, but it's a 3-day class and 1 day is all Myers-Briggs, and how am I supposed to remember all this stuff and do anything with it? It's interesting when I'm there, but when I try to apply it, I can't remember all that. And by the way, I have a full-time job, right? So I'm not going to be studying this for hours every night. So what we said was, well, Myers-Briggs is actually based on 4 personality types. They call these the 4 primary personality types. And the reason why Myers-Briggs came around is because when these were the only things that were out there, 2 women, mother and daughter, Myers and Briggs, very smart, said, there's shades of gray. Not everybody just fits into one of these. And that's true. However, if you learn these, it's going to be very effective for you if you are in that meeting with that person for the first time. Because when you meet with somebody for the first time, in like a 1-hour, 2-hour window, that type of setting, they will default to their primary personality type. You will not see Myers-Briggs. You will not see those shades of gray. Those come out over time. In fact, if you started working with somebody, and at the end of the day, that person was asked to describe you, the way they described you versus somebody that you were married to for 20 years would be totally different things. It'd almost be like you'd be 2 different personalities. The marriage piece is Myers-Briggs. The couple of hours, the 1 day, that's the primary 4 personality types. So if you learn these, they can do a lot for you. But the question is there a trick to it? Is there a way to kind of identify people quickly? And the answer is yes. But before we get there, let's talk about the personality types. And I want you to help me out here. So the first one we'll talk about is driver. When you hear driver, what do you think characterizes a driver? Just think of that word driver. What do you think represents a driver personality type? Type A personality type. What else? Control. The high desire for control. Absolutely right. Type A personality. Anybody else? What else?
General pattern.
What's that? General pattern, right? That's part of the control piece. Drivers are very short and to the point. They have a goal in mind. They want to get there. Now, mind you, here's the deal, too. As we go through these personality types, there's no bad or good, right? I did this once, and somebody's like, well, my husband's a driver. They're awful. And it's not what it is. It's not what it is. We're not going there, okay? But there's 2 questions I'm going to start asking you for each of these personality types. First one I'm going to ask you is this. Based on what we just said, high desire for control, short and to the point, right? Do you think a driver values people or values data? Data, some people said process. Yeah, they value data. That's where they lean. So the next question is, in terms of data, do you think they like facts or details? Facts, right? Which aligns with that short to the point, goal-oriented. Now here's the next question I have for you. Do you think drivers avoid conflict or they're okay with conflict? And before you answer, Let's define conflict for a minute. I'm not talking about WWF. You know, they're not people that come up to you and say, do you want to do an arm wrestle first? Or, okay, that's fine. When I say conflict, I mean that they are okay with interrupting you. They're not rude. They're okay with interrupting you. They're okay with disagreeing with you. They don't get emotional about it. These are the kind of people that'll call you on things. They won't embarrass you. That's not their intention. Their intention is to get the facts right. So, when you talk about a driver, do you think they're okay with conflict, or do you think they avoid conflict? They're okay. And I saw some faces and they go, they're okay with conflict. I've run into some drivers. And that is correct. They're okay with conflict. So when we talk about drivers, there's 4 key things here. First one is they're brief and to the point. They value data. And when we say data, they value facts. Think brevity, right? They have this need for control. Somebody said General Patton. They like to be in control. And then finally, they're okay with conflict, which means they're okay with interrupting you. They're okay with questioning something. They're okay with asking you to clarify something or to be more specific. Let's get to the next one. Analytical. Now, analytical personality types, especially from a customer service world, can be very challenging for people. But the same applies in an office setting. So when you hear the term analytical, what do you think? What do you think that personality type represents? Detail. So we've answered the first question, right? If we say, do they value people or data? The answer is data. And the next level is they value data and they like detail. They have a high tolerance for detail. And for those of us that are not analyticals, that is not fun. That is not a good time. But it is to an analytical, right? Analyticals ask a lot of these. What? Questions. They ask questions. Analyticals will actually research things before they meet with you. They'll research things. The internet is their best friend. And not only will they research things, they'll go to multiple sources to research things. And they will get into a meeting with you, and they will ask you questions that they already know the answers to. Why are they doing that? They want to test you. Let's see if you know what you're talking about. So if you really want to mess with analytical, you just throw the question back at them. Why don't you tell me first? Right? We're not going to get into Jedi mind tricks or anything. We're not going to do that. So at the end of the day, when you talk about an analytical, we said that they value data. And when they value data, it's all about detail. But the next question is about conflict. Do you think they avoid conflict or they're okay with conflict? I'm hearing a little 50-50. I hear more avoids, though, and the avoid people are right. They avoid conflict. Now, here's the struggle with analyticals. We talked about the 2 meetings that you have, right? One of them may be with an analytical. And you feel like it's going well. And they're asking you questions, and you're answering, and this is great. And they ask you more questions, you're like, sure. High five, I'll answer that. And then all of a sudden, you get towards the end of the meeting, and you think you've accomplished your goal, and you ask them, so you ready to move forward here? How do you think? Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I got to kind of process this for a little bit. Why? The reason why is because they made up their mind an hour before when you answered one of their questions either incorrectly or you didn't give them the level of detail they wanted. And because they avoid conflict, they will not tell you. They'll just sit there and go, back of their mind, that was wrong. Keep talking, right? The other problem we have with analyticals is a lot of times people will try to hurry through their questions if you're not an analytical, right? You're sitting there going, okay, it's like a game, right? Next question. And because you don't give them the level of detail they want, they actually shut down and they'll stop asking questions. You think you've scored and everything's set. The reality of it is they've checked out and they're done. But in your mind, you're thinking you've accomplished a lot. So when we talk about analyticals, they get a high tolerance for detail. We talked about the fact they ask a lot of questions, right? They'll do research before they even talk with you. And they'll ask you questions that they already know the answers to see if you know what you're talking about, and they avoid conflict. So we're halfway through. Next one is expressive. So you hear expressive. What do you think when you hear expressive? What type of characteristics? Outgoing, okay, what else? Throw it out there, come on. Isn't it better when you can shout out answers? Because you could be wrong, it doesn't matter. Just throw it out. Be like, awesome. Sure, I got it. What do you got?
A lot of detail.
No, believe it or not. Well, you know what? You're on the right path, but there's another side to it. So we'll get there in a second, okay? Because you're on the right track. Let me jump to this. Expressives do something better than anybody else. Now, every personality type can do this, but expressives do it better than anybody else. Think of a married couple you see, and they've been married for 30 years, and all of a sudden one of them starts telling a story, and the other one interrupts and goes, "Hey, quiet, let me tell the story." And the story becomes amazing. Yeah. Right? They're acting out voices, right? And they're like, it was I gotta tell you, we were at Vegas and I couldn't stop when I was literally up to it was like a couple of 100,000. At one point, I felt like that. And the driver sitting next to him being like, no, it wasn't. It was like $10. Oh, quiet. So an expressive, when you talk about an expressive, expressives love to tell stories. So your point about the detail, that's where you're at. Exactly right. They like to talk and they love to tell stories. And when they tell stories, they're animated. What's a good story? A good story is embellished. A good story is exaggerated. Expressives exaggerate. They embellish things. If you work with an expressive, they'll be like, we are set. We are set. They said that we won't be able to roll this out for 6 months. I'm thinking 3. That's just me. I'm just saying. Where's your facts? I got it right here. Right in the gut. I know what's going on. So let's ask those 2 questions again. Do you think expressives value data or people? People with a capital P, absolutely right. And do you think expressives avoid conflict? Are they okay with conflict? They're okay with it. They're okay with it. Now, the one thing you want to keep in mind is the funniest thing is when you see a driver and expressive get in an argument. Here's why. Here's why. Here's why. It's wonderful. My brother is an electrical engineer, and he is the epitome of a driver. And I have a little expressive. Let's just say that. Maybe you're sensing that right now. I don't know. I don't know how you're getting it. I don't know where you're getting that. And here's what happens. When drivers and expressives disagree about something, drivers will stick with the facts. They don't get upset. They don't get emotional. They just stick with the facts. Expressives will resort to personal attacks. So think middle school. You know what? I'll tell you something right now. Your shirt bothers me. I'll tell you that. Okay? So this is basically what happens. The driver will say, well, where'd you read that? I read it in a newspaper. What newspaper? I don't know. It was made of paper. Don't worry about it. When was it? Oh, it was like the summer? What time period? Does it really matter? What are you, a lawyer? Give me a break. Oh, all the facts, because if I don't have them, that's how an expressive reacts, right? So if you ever see a driver and expressive have a disagreement, you want to sit close and enjoy it. There you go. It's exactly right. It's exactly right. So when you talk about an expressive, they tell stories. They do it better than anybody else, right? They're animated when they talk. They use their hands. Right now, I'm constricted. I got things here, so you guys are safe. Right? But otherwise, it's all over the place. Because they value people, they want your opinion. Drivers and analyticals aren't like that, right? They want to know what you think. Think of the meetings you've been in with people, and you hear how people talk, and they'll say, well, your opinion's good for me. I mean, you've dealt with it before. It works for me. Whereas somebody else is like, well, how many times has that happened? Right? Do you have any data to back that up? How people react differently, right? And then we also said with expressives that they interrupt. They're okay with conflict. They're just not very good at it, right? So last personality type is amiable. Now, when we talk about amiables are the type of people that, well, let me ask you questions first. Let's start there. What do you think they value? You think an amiable values data or people? People, gigantically people. Because amiables care more about people than themselves. They care more about others. They are more comfortable when someone else is happy than they are. They're more concerned with other people. So if you show up to a meeting and somebody's like, would you like some coffee? Is that chair comfortable? You all right there? It's a little hot in here. You okay? You all right? Okay, that's fine. I will be back. I swear to you, I'll be back. Okay? Here's my cell number, email. And if I'm not back here, just kick a door or something. I will come right back. Amiables are concerned with others. What we tell the contractors is these are the kind of customers, when you come to the door, they say, would you like to have a cup of coffee? Man, this job's really tough, huh? It's hot. Basement's hot today, so it's really hot up there. I was up there, I gotta tell you, I went up there a year ago, and I lasted maybe 30 seconds. I opened the door, big whoosh of heat, I was out of there. You're a better man than me. That's an amiable. Now, if we say amiables value people, right? The next question is conflict. Do you think amiables are okay with conflict, or they avoid it? No. Yes, they hate conflict. They want to be Switzerland. So picture a family reunion, picture you're out with your friends. If you have an amiable friend or family member, and amongst a bunch of friends, you have 2 friends or 2 family members that, yeah, they tend to disagree, right? The amiable friend or family member will start getting kind of in the middle, right? Let's see, what do we got here for names? Here we got David. Okay, because we want to stick to the script, all right? So say, David, just don't worry about it. Listen, have a drink, not a big deal. Not a big deal. You should eat something. Every time you guys get together, you get a little crazy. You know, no big deal, just relax. It's like, we'll have a good time, the game's on. That's an amiable. They don't like conflict, so they like to squelch it. They like to squelch it. They want to make sure everybody's feeling great about things. They will disagree with themselves. So an amiable is sitting around a table. If you're in a meeting, an amiable would do one of these. I got to tell you, what I'm thinking is that the project will take, about 4 weeks. And the driver would pipe up and say, that's wrong. We're looking at least 12 weeks, a whole season. And the amiable would be like, you're right. When I think about, because I'm so bad with these things. I'm not thinking the whole project through, and you are, and I gotta tell you, thank goodness you're on the team. Because I am just, That's an amiable. So if we're talking about amiables, we're saying that they're people-oriented to an extreme degree. They're very agreeable. They'll disagree with themselves. They're big on approval. So these are the types of people you work with and say, I gotta tell you, did an amazing job there. And they're like, well, thank you. Thank you. It was a big effort on my part, but, it was a big team effort. It wasn't just me. Amiables love approval. If you give an amiable a compliment, that boom, through the roof. Love your jacket. Well, thank you. It's cotton, so pretty amazing. I notice you're wearing cotton too. And they avoid conflict to the nth degree. They hate conflict. They hate it, right? They will never disagree with you. They will never interrupt you. Amiables are the kind of people that'll sit at a table and they'll want to speak, but they will not interrupt somebody. If somebody else is just talking and won't stop, amiables will not interrupt them. You'll see them try to be like, you finish. Go ahead. Yeah, exactly. They do the face expression like, jumping in, jumping out, jumping in, right? So, that's the amiables. So the question becomes, what's the trick for identifying these personality types? Well, I've already shared it with you. We got 2 questions. So the next time you're in a meeting, you got to ask yourself these 2 questions. First question you ask yourself is, are they okay with conflict? Are they interrupting me? Right? Did they disagree? Because if they're okay with conflict, right away you can eliminate 2 of the personality types. They're either expressor or driver right now, because nobody else will do that. 50%, boom, gone. If they avoid conflict, very agreeable, change their opinion after you say something, right? Then they're analytical or amiable. Very quick way just to eliminate options. Instead of worried about, okay, what are all the characteristics? I got to think of everything. These questions get right at the root of it. Next question you got to ask yourself, we've been doing it, is, do they value data? Are they asking for facts and figures, right? If they are, then they're either a driver or an analytical. And what do we say about data? There's two different types of data. What type of data do drivers like? Facts, short to the point. So if it's a numbers thing or percentages, short kind of bullet type facts, that's a driver. If it's a lot of questions, or if it's a description of something and they're going into a lot of detail, that's an analytical. If they're telling a lot of stories, if they're complimenting you, if they're telling you about their family, friends. Let me tell you, the last family reunion we had was amazing. Let me tell you about it. It was, we didn't even get it catered. It was awesome. Agreeable, stories, exaggerate, embellish. They value people. They want your opinion. They ask your opinion. Well, what do you think? What do you think? Do you think that's a good move? You're talking about expressives and amiables. So if you got these two questions down, it's going to narrow down the scope of possibilities and help you quickly identify who you're dealing with. And it makes a huge difference. Now, next question is this. Now, this is what we got to do the timing, right? You ready? Okay. It's the Indy 500. You ready? Here we go. Now, everybody's wondering what's going to happen. There's no lighting show. There's no effects. So don't. Okay. Some people in the back are like, what is going on? I'm close to the exits. This is good. All right. So here we go. I want to show you a short clip. Now, this clip is very, the gentleman from CNBC, he passed away a few years ago. And when they were doing like a montage of his like greatest interviews, and this was in the top 5. Now, this is about 2 minutes long. What I want you to focus on is Barney Frank, right? I want you to observe him and think of those two questions. Try to answer those questions, and when the clip's over, I want you to tell me what personality type you think he is. So you do ready, set, go.
Representative Frank, this is David Faber. In this case, talking beyond those that are still recipients of TARP funds, so many other financial services companies took those risks. You're talking about.
Sure?
Ultimately, doesn't it?
All right.
Wasn't it the responsibility of the boards of directors of these?
I don't know why it's doing that. It's working up on the laptop. I think it's the projector.
And at the end of the day, are you really going to be able to change the way boards operate simply by what you're trying to do here?
Yes, if you put the shareholder in. You just asked me two contradictory questions. I agree with the second question. It is that, yes, you need to put shareholder in there because I think the boards have failed to carry out their responsibilities. Boards can do something, but boards and CEOs are joined at the hip. The CEO picks the board. They work very closely together. You're not going to have one day a year when in the midst of this intimate cooperative relationship, they become labor and management holding each other on plane. That's why we think the shareholders should be involved. So yes, I do, and that's where I differ with Secretary Geithner, who thinks, well, let's just strengthen the independence of the compensation committee. There's a wide consensus among regulators, among analysts, that compensation practices have contributed to excessive risk. The question is, how do you deal with it? Shareholder participation deals with the very good point you made about the problems of the board of directors. I think you go beyond that and mandate not that there be any dollar level, not that there be any particular split between bonuses or salary or retirement packages, but that whatever incentives are given have to take time horizons into account and have to be two-way streets.
Mr. Chairman, though, I hate to burn down the house here, but it seems to me that you're dealing with a model that no longer works because we don't have mom and pop sitting at home holding these shares. These shares are primarily in mutual funds, and the ownership is a derivative instrument. And I just don't see how you get this.
Well, I don't understand how you think that burns down the house, and I don't understand why you think doing nothing.
You're talking about
May I respond, sir?
You're talking about shareholder participation.
May I respond?
My point is the shareholder is at arm's length to begin with.
No, I disagree with that. I think that in the first place, solutions don't have to be perfect to be better than the status quo. And so what you have collectively suggested, let's do nothing at all. Let's acknowledge that there are... I'm sorry, please stop interrupting me. All right, excuse me.
Misrepresent what I said.
I am trying to respond to your misrepresentation.
I'm not misrepresenting.
I apologize, but this interview is over. I get 3 different questions. I try to respond. If you want to interrupt because you don't like what I'm saying, then you can find someone else to interview.
All right. So you think of the two questions. So the first question is, The toughest one, is he okay with conflict? Yes, with a capital Y, yes. So he's okay with conflict. So what two personality types can we narrow it down to? Driver and expressive. So the next question is, do you think he values people or data? Data, absolutely right. So again, we just eliminated two others, and it really, only one is remaining. And which one's remaining? Driver, right? It's a driver. Now, if you notice, sometimes people say, well, no, that's an expressive because he talked a lot, right? And he resorted to personal attacks at the end, but he didn't. He never really raised his voice, never really yelled. And when he argued based on what was going on. He said, you asked me two different questions from two different angles. You don't allow me to answer. He's basically stating what's happening. An expressive would have said, this is the worst network ever. Ever. And if you think I'll come on here again, forget it. Forget it. So at the end of the day, those two questions immediately tell you who we're dealing with. Let's do the next one. I appreciate your patience with the video. I think it's the projector doesn't keep up with the frame rate, but the voiceovers will help you kind of read what you're dealing with, and it's definitely valuable. So if we just go to the next slide, and if you double click on the video on the slide itself, so I'll tell you when to click on it. Ready? Here we go.
But just think back to, I know that you started Microsoft prior to 1977. I think Apple started the year before in 76. Microsoft in
74 was when we started writing the basic. But yeah, then we did ship the basic in 75.
Okay. Most people, some people here, but I don't think most people know that there was actually some Microsoft software in that Apple II computer. Do you want to talk about what happened there, how that occurred?
Yeah, there'd been the Altair and a few other companies, actually about 24 that had done various machines, but the 77 group included the PAT, TRS-80, Commodore PAT, TRS-80, and the Apple II. The original Apple II Basic, the integer Basic, we had nothing to do with, but then there was a floating point one where, and I mostly worked with Woz on that.
Let me tell this story.
Is the audio still go?
It is like the best basic on the planet. It does stuff that no other basic's ever done. You don't have to run it to find your error messages. It finds them when you type it in and stuff. It's perfect in every way, except for one thing, which is it's just fixed point, right? It's not floating point. And so we're getting a lot of input that people want this basic to be floating point. And like we're begging Woz, please make this floating point.
Who's we? How many people are in Apple?
Well, me.
Yeah.
We're begging Woz to make this floating point, and he just never does it. And he wrote it by hand on paper. I mean, he didn't have an assembler or anything to write it with. It was all just written on paper, and he'd type it in. He just never got around to making a floating point. Well, this is one of the mysteries of life. I don't know, but he never did. And so, Microsoft had this very popular, really good floating point basic that we ended up going to them and saying, help.
All right, so you may have situations where you're in meetings, you're dealing with two people at once, right? So you need to be able to kind of read and react to two. So let's talk about Gates and ask those questions. Do you think he values people or data? Data. Data. And in terms of level, do you think it's facts or detail? Detail. So it was a little hard to see in the video, but analyticals are so focused on getting the details right that they'll avoid eye contact. They'll look up as they're talking. So as he was talking, he goes, there was 74, 75, we shipped it, and then 76. And he corrected himself when the person said, I think it was 77. He goes, yeah, 77. They're so focused on getting the details correct. That's their concern. Next question is, was he okay with conflict or did he avoid conflict? He's interrupted by Steve Jobs. What does he do? Go right ahead. You have $1 billion too. It's no big deal. We're all friends here. An analytical, if interrupted, is not going to come back and say anything. He sits right back. If he was a driver and Jobs tried to interrupt him, he'd be like, hold on, you'll get your chance in a second. Let me just finish this. But he also wouldn't have been boring everybody to death with 74, 75, and then this. Now, let's switch over to Steve Jobs. First question. You think he's okay with conflict or he avoids conflict? He's okay, interrupted, right? So what does that narrow us down to? What two personality types? Driver and expressive. So what do we think? I mean, we can go to the whole value data versus people, but what does he do that just screams his personality type? Expressive because of what? Because of what? The story. The story, right? He's telling a story. Now, he told the same story Bill Gates did. It was a little better. Just a little better. And he was looking at Bill Gates like he was ready to melt, saying like, stop talking. Stop it. You're ruining this for everybody. These people paid to be here. And you're talking about years. And expressive, when put in that situation, will interrupt somebody because they want to tell that story. He does other things expressives do. What does he say when he's asked, what do you mean we? Who is an Apple then? What does he say? Oh, me. But remind you, before that he was saying, we were begging Woz to do this. Like Apple was 5,000 employees. He was in his dad's garage. That's an expressive, right? The other thing is expressives don't get hung up on detail. So the reporter says, well, why didn't you build the basics? Well, this is one of the mysteries of life. Who knows? Hey, look, another $1 billion. Now, if Gates was asked that question, he would have said, well, we were, there was five software projects going on at the time. One was named Altair. There was another one. You know, and he would just start naming everything. And then the reporter would be like, forget it, I asked. Just forget it. I get there was other things going on. So it's important to understand that this stuff is real. Let's go, we can go to the next slide and just go into the regular mode again. So the question you got to ask yourself is if we know who the person is, I think it's right down right there. There's a small button right there. That small one that looks like a little up top above that. Right here, actually. Hold on. Here we go. It's right. Here we go. Perfect. He's not a detail person? Everybody's not. See, let's not go there. Come on, guys. Come on. You think this is easy? You think this is easy? My arm is sore. This isn't easy. We're under a lot of pressure up here. I was going to start acting out the videos. So at the end of the day, the question you got to ask yourself is, okay, so if I can identify the personality types, why is it important that I know my own personality type? So you don't annoy people? For me, that's impossible. All right? But you're on the right track. The more aware of your own personality type, the more aware of the fact of things that will trigger you, right? And if you're more aware of your own personality type, and then you can read other people's personality types, what do you think that does for you? Smoother transition, you can read and react, you can adjust, right? Because in essence, if you know, at the end of the day, you all know your craft, you all know what you're doing, right? So you can modify the message as needed. You just need to know that it should be modified. You don't want to default to the style that you're comfortable with. And what did we ask before? We have 2 sessions, we have 2 meetings, one goes well, one doesn't. The one that didn't go well is because one was maybe an expressive, the other was a driver, right? One was a driver, the other was an analytical. They both like data, but the expressive is going too much detail, and the driver's like, come on, move on, right? So let's quickly look at each personality type and decide, how do you communicate with these folks? And it's really not that difficult. With a driver, I'll ask you the question, how specific would you be with a driver? A little louder? Factual. So you want to be specific, but the level that you're there is not deep dive, right? You want to be specific. You have the number, here you go. Drivers like that. They like that. If you can fire out a percentage or a number, and if you don't know the answer, you say, I'll get back to you, I'll send you an email with that number. They like that. If you get into the whole expressive thing, I have the number. I do. And it's not important, but I will get it to you. I'll tell you that right now. And but let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what happened with the number. It was a little crazy. It was like 10 years ago. I was headed on vacation to Barbados. My boss calls me. And, that's what an expressive does. And the driver's sitting there going, I don't care. Like, I don't care. Don't even email me, all right? So here's the next one. Here's another mistake people that aren't drivers make with drivers. Would you focus on facts or opinions? Facts. But again, if you're not aware that you're an expressive or an amiable, right, you would talk about opinions. Let me tell you what I think. And expressives will get offended sometimes. If you'd be like, well, do you have the facts to back that up? No, I don't. But let me tell you something. I've been doing this job for a year. And I know what I'm talking about. Okay? So when you think about a driver, just think about their strengths. Think about the things they're looking for. Succinct, to the point, right? And don't give them your opinion. Focus on the facts. Analyticals. Analyticals can be really challenging, right? So the question you have to ask yourself, if you're trying to give an analytical the answers, so you know they're an analytical, you're answering their question, you know they like detail, would you want to give those details quickly or methodically? Methodically, you want to slow it down, and that's hard. It's very hard for people to do that aren't analyticals. Because you're sitting there going, man, I'm boring myself. But the reality of it is you want to go to that level of detail. You want to go to that level of detail. Here's another one, mistake that people make. What did I say before about how you answer questions quickly with an analytical? You're trying to fire through the questions, right? That's usually an approach we take with analyticals. They ask us a lot of questions, and it's a race. The quicker I can answer these, the better. The quicker we get through this. Have you ever felt like you've been rushed before? Ever had a situation you felt like you're being rushed by somebody? Yeah, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to get a sense that you're being rushed. We all know that. Well, analyticals do too. So if you're assertive with them and you try to say, okay, well, here's the answer to that question, but let me just move on here. Analyticals don't like that. And they won't tell you they don't like that. They'll just shut down and say, okay, great. Nothing is going to happen here, but I'll smile, right? So at the end of the day, you do not want to be assertive with an analytical. You want to give them the details they want. Expressives, here's another one. Would you focus just on facts with an expressive, or would you include stories? Yes, now when I say that, you'll get drivers or analyticals in the room and say, what if I don't have a story? You don't have a story? I don't have a story. And then what I tell them is I go, make one up. And they go, huh? I had a driver once in a class that got really upset with me in the front row. What do you mean, make one up? What are you talking about? That's lying. And I go, that's not lying. Because the facts you share, as long as those are real, that's all that matters. The story you wrap it in is just communicating in a way that the expressive appreciates. The expressive is going to take that information in a lot better, right? Here's another one. If you have to share details with an expressive, would you do it quickly or would you do it methodically? Quickly, because they have no tolerance for details. If you're explaining something to an expressive, the sign it's a person's an expressive is they'll just sit there and go, I know, they'll stop. I know what you're saying there, and there's a lot of numbers, and that's great. But here's the thing. I was working on this thing like 6 months ago with this guy named Jerry. He seemed to have his stuff together. He seemed to know what he was doing, and just didn't really work out. So can you talk more about like what your experience has been and tell me about that? That's what an expressive would do, right? They're taking photos, and this is very frightening because if I'm in that pose of, My wife's a first grade teacher, and she had me speak to her first grade class. I got to talk to them about imagination, right? So I'm talking like, this is what imagination is and stuff. And they're like, wow, this is amazing, you know? I'm like, it is. Isn't it amazing? And my wife like is trying to get photos, and she goes, oh, I got a photo of you. And I'm looking like this. And there's all these 6-year-olds sitting in front of me. I'm like, that's really frightening. Don't put that in the newsletter. Finally, we got amiables. Now, with an amiable, would you give personal assurances with them to gain trust? Yeah. Now, I know you're looking at it saying it's really obvious, but remember, it's not obvious if you're not thinking of your own personality type and understanding that you got to adjust. Because a driver won't want to do that. A driver wouldn't want to give a personal assurance unless they had facts to back that up. But an amiable is okay with that. And then the last question, would you focus on facts or opinions with an amiable? Opinions, that's what they value. As long as they're based on reality, that's fine. It's not a big deal. Does that make sense to everybody? So if you get these personality types down, it's half the battle. It's only half the battle. Just because you know personality type doesn't mean
that you're going to be super effective at communication, because there's two parts of communication, especially when it comes to face-to-face. And there's three elements of face-to-face communication. You have the words that you use, the tone of voice, and body language. That chart you're seeing there, which one of those do you think is the biggest piece of that chart? Body language, absolutely right. Body language. Now, the key thing with body language is that it's not personality type. Think of it this way. Personality type is who you are. That doesn't change. That's who you are. Now, you can modify your delivery of information, but you're consciously doing that. Personality type is who you are, though. It's who you are. Body language is all about your current emotional state, how you feel, and that can change. I'm sure you've had meetings that start out positive, get confusing in the middle, maybe frustrating at the end, or total flip-flop. Start out confusing, frustrating, and then you're in a good mood at the end because things were worked out. Emotions change, so body language can change. And if you understand personality type and you can read body language, now you're getting somewhere. Now you're getting somewhere because you're communicating in a way that that person prefers, and you're adjusting based on what their body language is telling you. Now, does anybody know where body language comes from? Like what it is? Throw it out there. What do you say? It says it's emotional, but where does it come from? Like, do you think about it? It's subconscious. It's in your subconscious. You are not consciously thinking of body language. You're not saying, I'm going to get defensive. You don't. It's subconscious, and that's very important to understand. Now, when people say it's subconscious, the question is, well, what does that mean? And I think the easiest way, at least, to understand it is think of a movie theater. Anybody here ever see a scary movie before? Show of hands. All right, good. I had one room where nobody raised their hand, and I was like, television, outside, people, anything. Does everybody breathe? Right? So the good news is you guys are like, yes, everybody's seen a scary movie. You don't have to admit it, but let's just say you or somebody you know, did they jump at a scary point in the movie? Okay, we were all adults in the room. We know there's no monster in the closet, right? We know Jason isn't real, right? We all know that. Yet, you will watch this thing and you go, oh my God, right? A lot of weird voices come out. Weird reactions. Your body moves. You tense up. That happens because it's your subconscious driving that. Millions of years of evolution doesn't matter because our brains are hardwired in certain ways. And you ever hear that thing called fight or flight? Right? So the idea is I'm either going to confront the situation or I'm going. Right? Your brain is still programmed to just react to things. Just react. Okay? And you have no control over it. And that's where body language comes from. This is very important to understand. The reason why it's very important to understand is that you can actually start to predict not only what a person's feeling, but where they're headed with their feelings. Okay? Now this happens at home. I put down the remote. There it is. I know where it is. You weren't going to tell me either. You're like, shoes on the other foot now, huh? There we go. All right. So basically, we said that it's all about current emotional state, and those things can change, right? And how do you read body language? This is another thing. You read body language because it's only real when it's a reaction to something you said or did. So you're meeting with somebody. You have a proposal. You slide that in front of them, you start going through it, and you see their body change, their posture change. That's body language. That's real. That's what you have to look for. It's a reaction to something. So I want to show you some of the more common postures that you're going to see in meetings, with people, in like an office situation or a meeting. So there's about 6 here. First one, fingertips, elbows on the table, leaning in. Which one do you think that is? We got bored, aggressive, confused, frustrated, angry, or defensive. Trick question. It's confident. Good job. Who said confident? Who said confident? You're not going to admit it? That was right. You got it correct. It's confidence. If you're ever dealing with somebody, now you're taking credit for it. Wait, I heard it over there. That's not fair. That's not fair. Did you say that? What's that? That's why it's a trick question. I was trying to mess with you a little bit. Just go with it a little. Can't we just have a little fun? Just a little fun. You guys are like, yeah, great, play another video. That was fun. Right? So confident. The next one here, this is the most common one. I just actually did that over here. Arms folded. What does that mean? Defensive. It's the most common posture that you'll see. This one, my father was a school teacher for 38 years, right? He said he saw this a lot in class. Confused. Confused. Anybody that looks at something and starts to scratch their head, even if it's subtle, that means they're confused. It's a natural thing people do when they're not getting something, right? This one's a little difficult to show. Somebody does this. Somebody does something like this. Baseball player? Somebody said baseball player. What did you guys have for lunch? Frustrated, frustrated, frustrated. Now remember, body language is subconscious. You don't see this on the person's face. They're not like looking at you like, they're not like, oh. They're not doing that. They're not. What they're doing is they look at you calmly and they do a quick scratch. Anytime you see that, the person's getting frustrated. Here's another one. Now, a lot of people have already said this 3 times, so I don't know if a lot of people are bored around you. Like, people are just like, bored. Oh, not that. Bored. What's this one? Bored. Well, sooner or later, you're going to get it right, and here you are, right? If somebody is at a table with you, and they start, like, just kind of, I mean, the obvious one is when they start doodling, right? But there's things outside of that that happen where they become almost obsessed with a pen. Like, as you're talking, they maybe look like they're looking at something, but the pen becomes fascinating. Right? In a group setting, somebody like just starts looking out the window. Oh, look at that. Is it a leaf? Is that? Oh, here's a car. That car just went really fast. Right? Anytime you see somebody looking at something else or kind of daydreaming on something means that they're just bored. Last one. Now, the picture looks really aggressive, but this happens more than people give it credit for. Whenever somebody points their finger at you, they're starting to get angry. You won't see it in their face, right? They may not raise their voice. If you have kids, think of the times you've been like, if you do that again, you're done. Right? Right? But you're not yelling, you're not screaming. But as soon as that point comes out, the person's getting angry. That's a sure sign. Here's some other ones you see. What's it? Let me make sure I get the name. Jason, can you stand up for a minute? All right, so everybody's probably seen this, but let's just make sure. You ever have a situation where, so me and Jason are in the hallway, right? We're in the office, we're talking, right? And as Jason's talking to me, I start going, that's it, works for me. That's pretty cool. I love email. That's awesome. You go to the cafe, yep, cafeteria's great too. I got a thing. Yeah, absolutely, yes, that's fine, that's good. See how I'm like disengaging, right? I start turning away and walking away. Thanks, Jason. Now, what happens usually is the other person, if they don't read body language, starts going, yeah, I like email too. You doing lunch now? Where are you going? What are you doing? And they start following the person around. And the person's like, no, I'm just trying to get away. When somebody's shoulders become unparalleled to yours, so they're engaged with you, but as soon as they turn, it doesn't mean they're not interested in what you're saying. It means they got to go somewhere. And a lot of times, if people don't read that, it happens all the time, especially in office settings. You see it all the time. If you just observe, people do it often because they don't read it, right? They're thinking, I got to tell you what I need to tell you. And the person's just like, you can do it later. I need to go, right? This one here, the tilted head. Have you ever, anybody here own a dog? Okay, show of hands. So when you think of a dog, when a dog is kind of engaged at you, they'll tilt their head a little bit, right? People do the same thing. When people are engaged and they're listening to you and they're interested in what you're saying, you'll see a head tilt. Now, the thing you don't want to do is say to them, did you know dogs do the same thing you're doing right now? I own a dog, so I know, right? But the reality of it is it's the same type of thing. So whenever you see somebody's head tilting, this is a decision-making posture. This is telling you that they're interested in what you're saying. If anybody disengages from you, it doesn't mean they're not interested, but you risk really annoying them if you follow them around. You got to recognize they need to go somewhere, right? Or you risk kind of being that person who is like, hold on, just one more thing. All right. Two more. These look very similar. Which one do you think is negative? Hand on the chin or hand over the mouth? Hand over the mouth. Excellent. Hand over the mouth is negative. It's a subtle difference. You're in a meeting. We were doing this at the beginning of the presentation. You were acting it out yourself, right? When you were trying to talk, right? We talk about how amiables want to talk and they won't interrupt you. Well, body language, you ever have somebody in a meeting where they want to say something, they'll do this. As soon as they have their hand over their mouth, they want to say something. They want to say something. So if you're dealing with somebody one-on-one, stop talking. Stop it, because that person's telling you they want to say something, so let them talk. Let me just take a quick time out here and give you an opportunity. Is something you want to say? And they'll go, oh yeah. But remember, it's subconscious. They're not thinking, I want to talk, I want to talk. They will after they've been doing it for a few seconds, but if you catch it right away, you can circumvent it, all right? So at the end of the day, the hand on chin is exactly the opposite. That means, just like the tilted head, they're evaluating things. They're becoming convinced that what you're saying, it's a good thing. It's a subtle difference, but it means you're headed in the right direction. Now, I want to share the video again, and I want to see if this works. It may or may not, but I think it's valuable if it does. So all I want you to do, this is going to be like literally 10 seconds. So we'll escape out of this for a second, and now just click on the video. 10 seconds, I want you to pay attention to Steve Jobs. Is it working? No, I don't think it's working. All right, so here's what we'll do. I'll act it out. I'll play both roles. No, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. I mean, if there's volunteers, we'll just act the whole thing out, and it won't be as interesting because you'll be hearing me coach the person. Now do this, right? So we'll go back to the slides for a minute, but let me explain to you what I was going to show to you. If you go back to the slideshow, just jump to the next regular slide after the two videos. Let me just explain to you what they were going to demonstrate. When we watched that Steve Jobs, Bill Gates clip, remember he interrupted Bill Gates to tell the story? About 10 seconds before he interrupts Bill Gates, he rubs his arm. He does it very subtly. What does that mean? What do we say that meant when somebody kind of quickly scratches? They're getting frustrated. He wasn't sitting there going, oh, Bill, Windows, her. He wasn't doing that. He wasn't thinking it, but inside he's thinking like, this is frustrating me. You're not doing the story well. And that's the first sign. So if Bill could read body language, if he saw that, and if that was like a potential client or something like that, the thing Bill does is say, let me take a pause for a minute. You probably know the story better than me, right? They would give that person an opportunity. The second one I wanted to show you was a BBC interview. It's a 10-second clip. And BBC reporters, right? My brother-in-law, he's British, right? So he's got the English accent, right? He's way smarter than I am. He graduated from Oxford. I told him I've been to Oxford. Here. He doesn't really get it, but I just work with it. I'm like, well, that's fine. You have your Oxford, we have ours, and very similar. Very similar. But BBC reporters, right, they're very relaxed, they're very calm, they have the accent going on. And in the interview, the person's talking about politics, and he goes, well, I don't vote. And the interviewer very calmly says, well, if you don't vote, how can you expect people to listen to your opinion? And what you see is as soon as he points the finger, he's leaning forward. He's getting angry. And if you keep watching the clip, the reporter starts getting more and more aggressive. But the sign that it was going to happen was about 30 seconds before that. So the whole point of this is the fact that if you know personality type, you communicate in a way that people are comfortable with, the way they process information. If you know body language, you know if you're upsetting them. You know if they're happy with something. You know if they're listening to what you're saying. You know if they're getting annoyed. You know if they're bored, right? Here's the other thing. When people learn body language, they overanalyze it, right? You're folding your arms, you're folding your arms. Right? That's what they do. They overanalyze it. Everything is defensive, right? Everything, I think they're bored. He just scratched his head. Dang it! That is not true. It's not true. the way it's true is if it's a reaction to something you said or did. So if you say something or you do something and you immediately see it happen, that's real. It's not real if it's a habit, if it's cold in the room, right? People may fold their arms because that's just what they do. I was actually observing one of our contractors once, and he wanted some coaching in the field on the sales, so I was shadowing him. And he's a good guy. He was trying his best. But I felt so bad because the customer, got to the door and immediately folded their arms, and he's like, "All right, sir, is there anything I can say or do, or are you frustrated with something?" And the customer's just like, "No, what?" I even saw one situation where the person did the scratching the back of the head, and the guy goes, "You getting a little frustrated with this?" And the person's like, what are you talking about? He's like, "The body language, you just scratch the back of your head." So, and the guy's like, "What are you, Spock? What are you talking about? What are you doing?" So at the end of the day, don't overanalyze it, but use it to your advantage, because you can read it and get a sense of how things are going. And if you're trying to kind of practice where things are at, the best way to practice is kind of in the group settings, because you're not directly involved in the conversation every time. So you can still listen to what's going on, but kind of observe people's body language, because you'll start to notice that, wow, I saw that and now that person wanted to talk. I saw that before though. I saw that movement. I saw that hand over the mouth. And as you start to read that, you react better. I want everybody to shake each other's hand. Shake hands with the person next to you. So what are you told? What are you told from the time you're little about handshakes? What are you told the kind of handshake to have? Firm handshake. Firm handshake, right? And when you talk about handshakes, right? Handshakes are actually, messages get sent through handshakes, and people actually don't realize it. When you talk about a firm handshake, that's confidence, and that's why people tell you to have a firm handshake. We hear that from the time we're little. Always have a firm handshake. People also say eye contact as well. But at its core, you can send a message just by the way you shake a hand. So it's always good to have a firm handshake. But question for you is this: did anybody shake hands like this? No. Over the top. Did anybody do that? You're not admitting it. You're like, "I don't think so. Maybe not. Is it weird?" Right? Did anybody ever have somebody shake their hand like this? Over the top or underneath? It happens more than you think it does. And it's subconscious too. What does it mean? What does it mean? When somebody goes to shake your hand and they come in over the top with their palm down, they're looking to control, dominate the conversation. They want to communicate to you in a very subtle way that they're here, they know what they're doing, and they want to control the conversation. Now, they don't walk in saying, "Okay, here comes the handshake." That's not what they do. It's not what they do. What they do is it's very subtle. They come in to shake hands and they'll do this, right? If somebody comes in underneath, what they do is this. Now, what does that mean? Underneath means submissive, but there's a point to it. Think of somebody that, maybe somebody's a recent college graduate you're dealing with, and you go to shake their hand, they come in underneath. What they're saying is, "You have more experience than me, you've been doing this longer than me, I get it." Now, it's very subtle. No one makes conscious decisions to do these things. They don't. But the other thing is, you don't want to participate in these kind of handshakes, because you don't want that to happen. You don't want that subconscious communication. So what you want to do is, if you go to shake somebody's hand and they come in over the top like this, you just want to finish perpendicular to the floor. Now, it's not going to be an arm wrestling match. It's not going to be like, "No! Why are you still shaking my hand?" Don't worry, finish like this. We're friends. At the end of the day, you want to finish perpendicular to the floor. The reason why is that's the confident communication you want to provide. We're on equal playing field, right? I'm confident. This is how I want to be. I don't want to participate in that type of communication. If you don't think these things are real, if any of you have daughters or grew up in a house where you had a sister and their first date and your dad's at the door, potentially saying, "Should I put the bat there? Should I put the bat? Should I show this person the bat when they come to the door?" Odds are, because it's subconscious, that father may do this over the top. be home by 10 or I'll rip your hand off. Right? So at the end of the day, these things are real. These things are real, and you want to pay attention to them because it'll give you a sense of where this person is coming from when you first shake their hand, but always finish confident. So we talked about 3 things. First, we talked about personality types. There was 4 of them, okay? These 2 personality types love data more than people. Which 2 are those? Driver and analytical, good job. This personality type asks a lot of questions, will research things before you get there. Analytical, absolutely. This personality type loves stories, they exaggerate, they embellish. Expressive. This personality type wants to make sure your coffee is warm. Amiable, absolutely. They're more concerned with others than themselves. This personality type is Switzerland. They don't like to get into conflict. Amiable, it's kind of a trick, right? Back-to-back amiables. You're like, whoa, mixing it up, right? You gotta do it, right? If I'm talking with a driver, do they value my opinion? No. They value facts, right? If I'm talking with an amiable, what could I do to make them feel more comfortable around me? Ask them their personality type? Are you an amiable? Because I'll be much nicer to you.
Ask them whether they like their coffee warm.
Do you like your coffee warm? Good point. Or compliment them. That's a hell of a shirt. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That person complimented me 17 times. The best meeting ever. Then we got into body language. Personality type is who you are. What did we say body language represents? What's that? Subconscious reaction, and what is it communicating? How you feel at that moment, and emotions can change. So we talked about different types of body language. What were the fingers together, elbows on the table, leaning in? What does that mean? Confident, absolutely right. Arms folded, defensive. My dad's students, when he was teaching, confused. Somebody scratching the back of their head or their arm. Frustrated, getting frustrated. And then the last one, what are they excited about? Nothing. They're bored, right, exactly. Okay? So, that's it. That's the end. I know you're expecting a video, but we decided against it, okay? We will wait till after the session. We will be acting out some of the videos. If you care to stay till 7, 8 o'clock tonight, no problem, okay? We booked this later, all right? But I want to thank you for your time, and thank you for your patience and involvement. Thank you very much.